I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today I'm really excited to go back in time and share with you my first look at the 8 new Jacquard acid dyes that they released recently. Last fall, Jacquard Products sent me samples of the 8 new colors to give my feedback and thoughts on them as a dyer. And this whole process was so much fun and very exciting for me. Today's video is not sponsored, but Jacquard did send me these acid dyes for free, and they have sponsored content for me recently. There are 2 reasons why I decided to share this first look after I've already shared a more in-depth video about the collection. The first is that during the first look, I was calling these colors by their working titles. And a couple of the dyes have had their names change from when I first looked at them to the launch of the dyes. And so that might be a little confusing. I'll try to put something up with the actual name whenever I say the incorrect name throughout the video. The second reason is that while I was filming this and playing with the dyes for the first time, I had a lot of questions and there were a lot of things that I was wondering. And these are questions that I now know the answer to because I've had the opportunity to chat with Jacquard and ask a lot of questions about the dyes. And so I'm still going to ask the questions, but then I'll probably pop in to answer them along the way. And so this was just a really cool opportunity for me to be a part of all of this. Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and Jacquard has a lot of new acid dye colors. I am really excited because I feel like a lot of these colors will fill in some of the holes that were there from their collection of 40 colors that has been pretty consistent for years. And there's a lot of fluorescent colors in the new mix, and so I'm really excited to try these out and give my first impression of the colors. Now, before diving into the preliminary swatches of these new colors and showing you what they are, I do want to say there's one color I already dove into because it's a color I was so excited about, I needed to just try it on a full skein of yarn right away. And that is the supposed fluorescent blue acid dye. A color called electric blue, and I haven't done it yet. I'm about to do it, and I am so excited, and I hope I'm not getting my hopes up, but hopefully I will be putting some pictures up here of what the color looks like dry and under a black light for all of you to see. The black light blue acid dye is fluorescent, but there isn't a blue fluorescent acid dye pigment. This color is a blend of a little bit of a blue acid dye pigment and then a colorless but fluorescent acid dye pigment. And so the combination of these 2 dyes mixed together gives us the fluorescent blue acid dye. But now let's take a look at the rest of the colors. Here are the 8 new colors, and I'll give the names in a moment. What I think is fun is that when I was originally talking with Jacquard, they asked me what colors I would be dreaming of. And I said, you know, a nice bright berry pink, and we've got a magenta in here. I said a mint or seafoam green, which we don't really have, but there is like an aqua. I asked for a dark green that was less blue than spruce, and we've got a crocodile green here. And the big one though is electric blue, which is supposedly fluorescent. Now, I am super excited to see fluorescent orange, fluorescent red, and safety yellow, which are likely fluorescent. Vivid violet and electric blue, I have high hopes for. I thought that the first thing I was going to need to do today would be to remove all of the seals from these jars. That's something I had to do a lot of when I was doing my muck video, mixing all 40 Jacquard acid dyes together. But when I opened up the jars while wearing my respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves, I realized that these don't have labels on them. Maybe because they're samples, or maybe because Jacquard has changed the way they do things. So that isn't something that needs to happen right now. In my catering steam pan on the countertop, we have 100 grams of Knit Pick Stroll fingering weight yarn. This yarn is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. And to it I added 2 cups of water with 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. And I've sort of spread it out a bit so that way we can crudely swatch our 8 colors on here to get an initial impression at how potent they're feeling, how intense the colors are feeling. Maybe we won't know if they break because it's not hot. Some colors do behave differently if you use them while they're cold versus while they're hot. That is something that we've seen in the past, but this is just a initial first look so we can get a feel of the range that we have in these new colors. Let's start with the color that I've actually looked at a little bit. This color is electric blue, and I was surprised to see that it is not very pigmented. I have taken a fair amount of powder here, and I'm going to add it on. I added it mostly in that one spot, and you can see it is a beautiful color, but that is not a lot of dye. Not a lot at all. And I'm going to grab a little bit more because I kind of missed the yarn when I added it. Can add all that powder on. It reminds me a little bit of frozen blue in that we have a bright blue from a color that is pastel. But I will say I did expect something more pigmented from a color called electric blue. The powder there did look a little yellow, and so I think that it has filler in it. Why was the name change of this fluorescent blue dye from electric blue to black light blue? This is partially because of the feedback that I gave, where I was expecting this color to be a saturated neon blue color that fluoresced. But partially because of the way fluorescence works and that there isn't a fluorescent blue acid dye pigment itself. This dye is a mixture of a little bit of a blue acid dye and then some fluorescent but colorless under white light acid dye. So it is an acid dye, but it's a separate molecule. And so the ratio of the blue to the colorless fluorescent pigment is something that is important so you can see that fluorescence. And so when I shared with them that my expectation from electric blue was going to be something super pigmented, they decided to change the name to black light blue, which I think is a wonderful name because I think it both evokes a sort of paler blue color if you think about looking at something white under a black light, but also indicates that it's fluorescent. And so that was just really fun. And I talk about this color a whole lot in the other video that I mentioned. Let's look at Aqua Tropic. This color looks already, just looking at the powder, like it's going to be more pigmented. And I just took a little bit of it. Ooh. That is pretty. It is definitely, I used less powder than I did from even one of the dips into electric blue. This is definitely much more pigmented. The tone does feel similar. Like maybe there's a little bit more green in there, but I'm not entirely sure. It's looking more green, I think. Editing Rebecca here. I just realized it's not aquatrophic. It's not aquatropic. It's aquatropic. So, enjoy this little error. I think that this is hilarious. Clearly, I wrote it down wrong in my notes the first time, and I think I wrote like trophic, T-R-O-P-H-I-C, then realized there was no H. So I'm like, oh, it's not trophic, it's tropic. Next up is Crocodile Green, and I'm very excited to see what this color does. Okay, at first it looked like it was going in very, very blue. And I was going to be a little sad because spruce is so blue. But I think that this could give us it's like a nice green that isn't too yellow. But it does feel a lot more green than teal. And look at it really, really dark. I think that this is going to fit in a really nice hole in the Jacquard line. Because I think emerald green is really, really bright, and this green is less bright. Next up is Vivid Violet, and I have no idea if this color is fluorescent or not. I'm trying to just take up a little bit of the powder at first. Whoa, I would say that this is likely fluorescent. This makes me think of Purple Pop from Dharma. You can see that we've got this pink spread and that purple towards the center. I felt like my gut told me based on some of these other colors that that might be what it is, and I think that that is what it is. Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, and part of the reason why I expected that, I think I maybe was hoping for something like electric violet, but having something like purple pop also makes me happy. This next color is called Safety Yellow, and I'm expecting, I don't have any reason to believe that it is, I'm expecting that it's going to be a fluorescent yellow, a neon yellow. And it is looking like a neon yellow to me. This is a primary that was missing from Jacquard's line right now. And given that the next two colors I'm going to look at are called fluorescent, that's why I expected that and this might be fluorescent as well. I will say the electric blue does feel neon. It's just way less pigmented than all the other colors. Okay, this one is called Fluorescent Orange. And I feel like I have a lot of it right here. Yeah, this is going to be pigmented. Ooh, I don't know. This seems to break a little bit less than the, I did see a pink speck come out. But the Fluorescent Safety Orange from Dharma definitely has sort of like a yellow halo to it. And then we have a Fluorescent Red, which is something that I've mixed when I've done neon mixing with Dharma colors. A nice red, but ooh, oh, I like this color. It is definitely more red than Hot Fuchsia, which is a fluorescent pink that already exists in Dharma's line. But it is still very pink color-wise. I think if it felt more red, it wouldn't feel neon. That is really, really cool. The final color is magenta, which I'm not expecting to be fluorescent, just like I don't think that green is fluorescent. But that's because Jacquard already has a fluorescent pink in their line. They have Hot Fuchsia. Although this could be, it is certainly a very, very bright pink. So I have no idea if this one is fluorescent or not. I don't have any ingredient information. I now want to let this sit for just a few minutes at room temperature to see if things change or shift at all. I will say it's taking all of my restraint not to bring this yarn into a closet right now and look at it under a black light, but I've already made a commitment to myself to wait until the blue yarn that I dyed is dry to look at it there, to be more similar to the way I usually look at yarn under a black light. And so I'm going to try to do that here as well. It's been 10 minutes, and the one thing I do want to note is that on this color here, with the white balance, I'm not sure how easy it is to see on this Aqua Tropic, but we do have some more green and more blue leaning colors there. I think that this is a color that would break, and therefore is one that I am excited to play with more. Now we have a lot of neon colors in this collection, and you may wonder why we're not seeing like a neon green or, I mean, we don't know if this is fluorescent, but a neon pink. And that is because Jacquard already has fluorescent greens and fluorescent pinks in their line of 40 colors. And so that's not something that they needed to add. Now, normally at this stage of a swatch, I would probably add more dye because we don't have a lot of pigment on here. We have sections that are probably still very, very white. So I do not consider this to be a finished yarn. But I do want to try to set the colors as they are here because I want to look at these crude swatches under a black light, and we'll see how well we can keep the colors from spreading too much. We're now over on my stove, and I'm going to start slowly heating things up. And to the last 2 cups of water that I have pulled, I'm going to add, I think, 4 tablespoons of white vinegar. And that is so we can start adding some more water. We do not want anything to burn. I have not burnt yarn yet, and I do not want this to be the time that I do. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that we have water on the surface. I do see our electric blue looks like that is spreading a bit, but so far the rest of the yarn seems, or the rest of the dyes seem to be staying where I put them. I think it helps that they're each in their own little crevice of yarn and not near the edges. We'll see if this pink starts moving out though. I'm reducing the heat, but then actually I'm turning it up again because we're warm in the center and having the heat on higher sort of makes the burners be a little bit bigger. And I'm gonna add little bits of water onto each of the areas where we have the dye to also make sure that our yarn is nice and wet. And since we have acid in here, that should be helpful. Now, I am seeing some of this blue spread. I did dye, again, so a 1% and a 0.5% depth of shade with the electric blue so far. And so I know that that color does strike not immediately, but pretty quickly. And so if I keep an eye on it, maybe we'll keep it from overtaking the other colors and skewing our results. But I can make the heat a little bit lower, and I'm gonna add some foil to cover this. Whoop. So we can check back in on the yarn in about, we'll check in 15 minutes, but I'm gonna make the heat as low as I can right now. Trapping in the steam should help. Why do I do crude swatching like this instead of dissolving the dye and doing a proper swatch at a 1% depth of shade? The reason why I like to take a quick and dirty look at the colors is because a lot of times when I dye yarn, I like to use dry dye powder directly onto the yarn versus dealing with the dye in liquid form. And so therefore the color of the dyes matters when I'm using the direct powder application. And I can compare the colors that we have here today to other colors of Jacquard's dyes that I have looked at in the past. So then we can really see, oh, okay, this color is very similar to that. Maybe chartreuse and Kelly green should not be used in powder form on the same project if I want contrast. Yeah, that's the reason why I started doing this in the first place. And it's just a way to get a feel for the temperature of a color, the hue, how pigmented the color is. And so the one of these that stands out is electric blue is way less pigmented than the other 7 colors. Now, the one thing, as I said, that I don't usually do with a crude swatch like this is try to preserve the colors where they are. Usually I let them spread and I just turn it into sort of a fun random colorway. But I think that I want to let this dry, and if the colors don't spread too much onto one another, we can look at this under a black light and see which of these 8 colors are fluorescent. And if the blue is, then we can go and play with a Jacquard neon rainbow, which I am very excited to play around with. Ooh, and we can compare it to Dharma's neon rainbow. Ooh, there are a lot of things we can do, and you know I love a neon rainbow, so I am very, very excited. Well, it's been 10 minutes, and things seem to be staying put pretty well. Let me see. Like that blue is moving a little bit, but I don't think I'm seeing massive bleeding or anything, which is good. Good for at least like my goal here today, which is to actually look at these colors as much as we can later on. So I am now going to cover this again and heat it for an additional 20 minutes so we can set these colors the best that we can. The 30 minutes are up. Things are looking relatively unchanged, but what I'm going to do is turn off the heat and just leave this foil on so that way we can let things stay nice and steamy. Our yarn mop from today has not seen very much action so far, so I'm going to save this for use for another project. Let's wash this yarn, and I think the colors really stayed very, very true to where I put them. And I will say, underwater now, this orange, ooh, I see some really pretty pinks in there. It's feeling more neon to me than it did originally. And so that is really, really nice. All right, so far so good. There's so little dye here overall that I'm not expecting any bleeding, but let's add a little bit of some soap. Because if we got bleeding with this little amount, then that might be sad. But it seems like everything has struck really, really well. Ooh, look at that yellow. Oh, with the sunlight, it almost glows. Hopefully it glows. But anyway, I'm gonna finish rinsing out the soap. And then I'm gonna put the yarn through my spin dryer, hang it up to dry, and we'll finally look at it under a black light. Before we talk about the yarn and the new colors, I want to point out something that I've been observing a few times in recent months, which is perplexing to me. Because historically, I reuse my zip ties over and over again, and I don't get transfer. But I've been seeing things recently that I've been wondering if it's a little bit of transfer. And over here, we have some peach on the yarn, which kind of looks like a color that could have come from the zip tie. It is also a color that could have been in the pan. Oh, you know what? I mean, maybe it is more likely from the pan because it is so spread out and that there was some red left in the pan. Because I did use the pan and dyed something before and I tried to scrub all the red off. I'm actually thinking that oh no, but I did that video after this one. Yeah, so this seems like something significant came off. I don't know if it's that I stopped washing the zip ties as much or what. And maybe it's that I'm not, when I'm washing, moving like the zip tie, so there could be some color trapped underneath there, which then remains on the tie and can transfer to yarn. I don't know, but I think I'm gonna need to quarantine a lot of my more saturated zip ties, and we may need to do a video and a test on this, which that will probably come out before this video, but I think that that's something I'm going to need to investigate. But anyway, this is a bummer, and it doesn't happen often because there haven't been many times where I've seen it and commented on it, and I've reused zip ties a lot more frequently than that. So yeah, I think we have some needs to do some tests. And I will add that of the at least 40, maybe even more zip ties that I've used to dye yarn this week, I've only observed something that feels like transfer on 2 skeins. So the comment is not super pervasive, because if I noticed it on every single skein, I would make a change. So again, this is something that requires some investigation, and honestly, there were skeins of yarn that pre-soaked with this one that I dyed in other videos and I did not see it there. But anyway, let's look at our finished dry colors. And I've tried my best to arrange this so that way we see some of the more pigmented patches. I think that some of the fluorescent red is a little more pigmented there. The orange maybe more towards the middle. The blue right there. There was definitely some twists in the yarn, so I'm trying my best, but the colors are beautiful. And I can tell you right now that the electric blue is fluorescent. It glows, and I'm really excited to see it not as a tonal, to see how it does. Some other things to note before I bring out the black light. This aqua color has beautiful breaking in it. It reminds me a little bit of sea spray in the amount that it's breaking, but it's a brighter color than Dharma Sea Spray. I'm also seeing a lot of breaking in the fluorescent orange. Ironically, I'm seeing a lot more orange and pink, and I'm seeing less yellow than what I see typically with Dharma's fluorescent safety orange. At some point, I'm going to need to do some comparisons of all these colors to just see how they behave under different situations. The electric violet also does definitely break. We can see that there. I wonder, because I think I was giving some critique before about how maybe violet may not be the best name because violet evokes something a lot more blue, but this is a color that I want to see as a tonal to see how purple versus pink it feels, because I might be a little biased from my experience with Dharma's Purple Pop and thinking about that color, which is also why I use so little of it here. But enough of me chatting. Let me turn out the overhead lights. And so we still have some ambient light in here, but I'm now going to bring in a black light, and we may go into the closet in a bit, but All right, let's see. I see glowing. Look at that blue. It's looking green on camera. In person, it looks very, very blue. The fluorescent red, orange, and yellow are very, very bright. The blue maybe isn't as bright. I mean, I would say the blue is brighter than the violet, which has a lot more of the pink in it. The aqua, the alligator green, and the, was that magenta? None of those colors are fluorescent. And so I'm actually really, really glad that there is a non-fluorescent, bright, vibrant pink. I think that that's useful to have for mixing, and is a pink that would be less temperamental than hot fuchsia, which, don't get me wrong, I love. Okay, but even with the lights on, if I bring the black light in, you can see the blue start to glow. The violet does as well, but you don't feel it as much as in like the blue and the yellow. Oh man, I am very, very happy, I think, with all of these colors. The blue is very, very bright and glows way better under the black light than I expected. Honestly, I expected to have next to no glow. It doesn't feel like a neon right here yet. I feel like I need to use more of it. I feel like it needs, and we used, I think, a lot more of this blue than we did the red, the orange, or the yellow. We definitely used less of the violet, but actually, I want to look at the violet a little closer because I'm curious if the blue pigment in there. Okay, the blue pigment in the violet does not glow. The blue over there glows. That blue in the violet doesn't. I was so curious to know if Vivid Violet was going to have the fluorescent blue acid dye in it. And that's partially because at the time I didn't know that there still isn't a fluorescent blue acid dye molecule. Blacklight blue, again, is a mixture of some blue acid dye with a colorless fluorescent acid dye pigment. And unfortunately, if you take that fluorescent acid dye pigment and try to add some reds to it, even a fluorescent red, it completely kills the fluorescence. And so that is why that fluorescent molecule isn't incorporated into Vivid Violet to make that neon. And in fact, Vivid Violet is not marketed as a fluorescent color, even though the pink in there is fluorescent. But if you do want to make Blacklight Blue a little bit more pigmented, you can add some turquoise or brilliant blue, and you might see a reduction in the amount of fluorescence, but those colors won't quench it like a red or a pink would. And you were going to develop a fluorescent purple color. Why wouldn't you use that fluorescent blue pigment in the purple? Which this fluorescent purple is a very pretty color. It's a color that, you know, I play with the Dharma counterpart all the time. So certainly I'm now thinking about mixing the electric blue with hot fuchsia to make my own very fluorescent purple to see how that comes out. I'm also curious if mixing the electric blue with, say, turquoise or something, if I were to mix those pigments together, would it still glow well? Because it does have a lot of glow right now. And so it doesn't necessarily need more pigment under the black light. It just needs a little bit more to feel electric. I mean, Safety Yellow is practically glowing under natural light. It is so neon. And the orange is a lot more neon dry than it was feeling when it was wet. I was feeling like it wasn't really punchy enough. I think it's great. This yarn is only maybe 90% dry right now, and honestly, I'm planning on going and dyeing it again because I feel like it needs more color. A lot of these colors, you know, they don't go all the way through a section, and so it could work up in a fun way. It just, I like the concept of the rainbow colors. The rainbow colors sort of interspersed with white around a skein, and I think that's something that I need to play with and try to do again intentionally. But I would like the colors to go through more of the area. I don't want them to be just as patchy as they are. And so my overall impressions of these colors are very, very positive overall. I have played with some of them a little bit more, and I may continue playing with them more so that way I can provide reasonable feedback. I am very excited to play with these new fluorescent colors with the existing fluorescent colors in Jacquard's collection and contrast them with the ones from Dharma that I use over and over again. But again, with those Dharma colors, a little bit goes such a long way to get a neon feel that I wish that this blue, I mean, I feel like the volume is at about a 3 and I want it up at a 10. Don't let that dim my excitement to have another pigment that glows under the black light. I mean, we can finally have a neon rainbow where all of it glows, where we don't have the darkness that comes from the blue. And especially if we mix this with hot fuchsia to make our own purple, and we mix it with safety yellow to make our own green. So that way we're not having whatever that other blue pigment is in, goodness, I forget if it's Kelly Green and Chartreuse may both be fluorescent. I think one of them is from Jacquard. And then the Electric Violet definitely has that blue that isn't fluorescent. So if we make our own, we could have something that just glows. And that would be really, really fun to play with. Oh goodness, imagine it on like the zebra yarn base. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. So anyway, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I really hope you enjoyed this very surface level first look at these new colors. Normally, if I'm doing a dive into new to me colors, I go a little bit deeper. We'll do some speckles, we'll do some full-on tonals, which, to be fair, I did that in another video. And we would do, you know, maybe some other kind of colorway, but I was too excited that I wanted to see how these colors performed before doing that. So to see me play with these colors more, please subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss any new videos. And if you want to help support the content here, go and check out the ChemKnits Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/ChemKnits, or you can find the link down in the video description, along with a lot of other helpful links of ways that you can help support the content here so I can keep exploring different colors and different ways to play with dyes, all types of dyes. Thank you so much for watching.